Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. You'll remember that about 2 weeks ago, there was a press briefing with President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and they shocked the world by announcing that the United States is going to take over the Gaza Strip. Something that I don't think very many people saw coming. It shocked me. So after that, this question was asked. Question, we're looking at Times of Israel. They have the full transcript of the press briefing. Question, Mr. President, do you support Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria areas, which many believe is the biblical homeland of the Jewish people? Trump, well, we're discussing that with many of your representatives. You're represented very well, and people do like the idea, but we haven't taken a position on it yet. But we will be making an announcement probably on that very specific topic over the next 4 weeks. Okay, so they had just talked about the United States taking over the Gaza Strip, and I'm not going to go into all the details about that, but like that by itself is pretty shocking. And now they're talking about, let's go to Google Maps. They're talking about this, what's currently known as the West Bank. The Israelis, the Jews call it Judea and Samaria. And I mean, it's been like this ever since Israeli independence in 1948. And there's been this big Israeli-Palestinian, Israeli-Arab conflict over these lands. And in particular, over Jerusalem, or at least eastern Jerusalem, where you have the Temple Mount. So I came across this article on Israel 365, Historic Sovereignty Bill for Judea and Samaria introduced in Knesset. This was published today. I'm recording this on the 19th. So this is maybe what Trump was talking about. I guess maybe he already knew that this was in the works, and maybe shortly we'll get like an official response to this from the Trump administration. But take a look at this. We're gonna look at this, and then we're also gonna look at the curse of the 8th decade. If you've been watching my channel for a while, we've talked about this, but there's this Jewish Israeli idea of the curse of the 8th decade, which we're currently in. We're going to talk about the fact that this year is going to be Israel's 77th birthday, which that's pretty interesting. And then we're going to talk about the official stance of the church. Okay, so let's take a look at this. In a bold legislative move that could reshape Israel's future, Knesset member Ohad Tal, Religious Zionist Party, has introduced a groundbreaking bill to apply Israeli sovereignty throughout Judea and Samaria. The initiative represents a significant shift in approach to the region's status and comes at a crucial moment in Israeli history. Yeah, to say the least. This is really shaking things up. It's really, if this all goes through, the Gaza takeover by the United States and applying Israeli sovereignty over the West Bank, Judea, and Samaria, I mean, this is going to fundamentally change everything that Israel's been dealing with ever since its conception. This is a radical move. Speaking exclusively to Israel 365 News about the bill, MK Tal emphasized that the time has come for Israel to go back to the truth about its connection to these biblical heartlands. Quote, "We're here not because we need Judea and Samaria for security reasons. We are here because Judea and Samaria is the biblical heartland of the Jewish people. We are here in this land only because of these places." End quote. Later on, the move represents a departure from decades of interim arrangements that has governed the area. Tal's initiative comes at a particularly significant moment, as he points out that recent events have prompted a fundamental reassessment of long-held assumptions about peace in the region. Quote, "For too many years, we've tried to fool ourselves. allowing ourselves to become addicted to false peace and quiet, to think that if you pay the bully, he will leave you alone. Okay, and then Israel 365 News includes this reel from Instagram, maybe Facebook as well. Make sure to follow me on Instagram for additional content. I'll put the link in the description box below. And here it is. There's like a Hebrew and an English version. I only found the English version on Instagram. And I transcribed it. So this is what it says. This is him talking. It starts out, "It's time for sovereignty. It's been almost 58 years since we liberated Judea and Samaria, and yet the state of Israel has still not officially applied its sovereignty there. There have always been excuses. Why not apply sovereignty? But now, more than ever, especially after October 7th, everyone understands that it doesn't make sense to establish a Palestinian terror state in our ancestral land. With an incredibly pro-Israel administration in the White House, it's time for Israel." Sorry, that's bugging me. Typo. "It's time for Israel." Gosh dang it. "It's time for Israel to recognize that Judea and Samaria are integral parts of our biblical heartland. They've always belonged to the Jewish people, and they always will. This is why I've introduced a bill, along with members of my party, to apply Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. With God's help, 2025 will be a year of sovereignty, and together with President Trump and his team, we will make this historic move for the benefit of our future generations." And then it ends with, "It's time for sovereignty in Judea and Samaria." Now, Trump has already played a pretty significant role in Israel. During his first term, he moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which was viewed as a huge move because the United States recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of the state of Israel, right? So that was a big deal. Now, this is obviously going to be a much bigger deal if it actually happens. I don't know how likely it is. The article doesn't say if this kind of thing, like what's being proposed here specifically, has been proposed or introduced as a bill before. There have been other, offers and things like that, but I don't think there's been anything like this where someone's like, no, let's just do it. Let's just take the land. Before we move on, let's take a look at the church website under study helps for the scriptures. This is map number 3. Map number 3, the division of the 12 tribes. So let's go back and forth between Google Earth and this map. So you can see the Dead Sea right here, and the West Bank, or Judea and Samaria, goes down into the west, and then it goes north into the west. Jerusalem's right here. Okay, so kind of get your bearings, take a look at this, and then we'll go over here. So in ancient times, this land would have been the land of Judah, and hence they call it Judea. And then the rest of it would have belonged to it looks like part of Benjamin, Ephraim, and Manasseh. It doesn't look like it goes all the way up to Issachar or Zebulun, but basically Manasseh, Ephraim, Benjamin, and part of Judah. Okay. So yeah, those are significant areas, especially Ephraim and Judah. Well, Benjamin too, because yeah. But anyway, so let's go back to this now that we read that transcript from the Instagram reel. The Knesset member referenced multiple historical attempts at territorial compromise, including the 2005 disengagement from Gaza and former Prime Minister Ehud Olmert's 2008 peace proposal that would have given the Palestinians 96% of Judea and Samaria and shared sovereignty over East Jerusalem. Quote, "It has been proven time and time again that it doesn't bring peace, not stability, not prosperity, only misery, agony, death, and bloodshed to everybody, to Jews and Arabs alike," Tal asserted. Later on, the legislation comes amid increasing pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government to take decisive action regarding the future of Judea and Samaria. Now, let me know right now in the comments, do you think that this is going to pass and that they're actually going to do this? I'm going to be honest. I think this is going to happen. I really do. I feel like this is leading up to the final conflict, and I don't know exactly what that looks like. I've talked about it with Rachel, who studied this in college, and this was her profession for many years. She lived in Iraq and worked at the embassy for some time. So she has a pretty good, handle on Middle Eastern politics. But I feel like this is all just like coming to a head, and this is a big part of it. So essentially, I mean, of course, this goes back to the establishment of Israel, but in recent times, this really starts with October 7th, it seems, because if October 7th hadn't happened, you wouldn't have all these drastic proposals and moves. I don't think, anyway. Okay, so, yeah. Okay, while such significant diplomatic and security measures are typically not advanced through Knesset legislation, there is a precedent for such action as demonstrated by the recent law reversing the disengagement in northern Samaria. Okay, well, this one seems a little bit bigger than just that, because this is like changing the course of history, and who knows what's going to happen. In a post on his Instagram account, Tal emphasized the urgency of the situation. Quote, Israel cannot remain in an interim state. If we don't decide what happens in Judea and Samaria, others will decide for us, and we know how that ends. Sovereignty means security. Sovereignty means historical justice. Sovereignty is our future here. The bill represents a significant challenge to the status quo and signals a growing movement within Israeli politics to assert permanent Jewish sovereignty over the biblical heartland. As Tal notes, the initiative is about more than just security considerations. It's about acknowledging and respecting Jewish heritage and historical connection to the land. And then at the very end, it says, as the bill moves through the legislative process, it is expected to generate significant debate. No kidding. Both it's kind of a big move, both within Israel and internationally. However, for its supporters, the legislation represents a necessary step towards securing Israel's future and establishing clarity about the status of those historically significant territories. Okay, so I don't know if this is just one of those things where it's like, yeah, this would be big and it would change history, but it doesn't go anywhere. Or if it does go somewhere, I kind of think that it will. It seems to me like Trump would back it up. That seemed to be the tone at the press briefing, even though he said, he says, we haven't taken a position on it yet. I mean, maybe not an official one, but I'm sure that he has some idea the position that he wants to take. So I guess we'll see. Okay, now, so it comes at an interesting time because Trump is now in office, and we also have this thing, the curse of the eighth decade. I have a couple quotes here. One is from Middle East Monitor, and then this one from Jerusalem Post. I'm just going to read it from Jerusalem Post. I think it probably states it the best. This is from an article called 75 years old is a dangerous age for Israel. Well, I wonder what 77 is, because you got those two sevens. Okay, a few weeks ago, when speaking of Israel's 75th anniversary, President Isaac Herzog worried whether the state would reach 80 years. The precedents, he said, were not encouraging. Of the two Jewish states of antiquity, one split into two parts that never reunited, and the other lost its independence. The quote-unquote united monarchy of Saul, David, and Solomon is said to have lasted not much longer than 100 years. The Hasmonean dynasty ruled in real independence from 140 to 63 BCE, when Pompey occupied Jerusalem. 77 years. Interesting. This might be a significant year. Israel turned 77 this year in May. Both were ruined not by foreign enemies, but by domestic infighting comparable to the events of today. 70 to 80 years, plus or minus 2 or 3, has universally been considered the lifespan of 3 generations. Their sequence is thought to follow a regular pattern. The first generation creates, the second maintains, and the third or fourth destroys. Now, this is something that's been repeated by other prime ministers, Benjamin Netanyahu, Naftali Bennett. So this is actually something, here's Ehud Barak right here. This is something that they actually kind of take seriously. This is my spreadsheet called Quotes Rising Generation. It's mostly made up of quotes from general authorities about specific generations. And I thought that I would put this on here, columns G and H for Israel, to keep track of how old Israel is. So they turned 77 this year. That by itself is probably significant. What's also interesting is that before it hits 80 years old, it'll be 79 in the year 2027. So like the last year before hitting or reaching a full 8 decades, the year before that is the year that the Salt Lake Temple is going to be dedicated. So I think that is really interesting. Now, let's finish this off with this quote from, at the time, Elder Howard W. Hunter of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. This is on my spreadsheet called Quotes A through Z. Again, the link for my spreadsheets is in the description box of each video. I get emails all the time asking if you can have access to the spreadsheets. Yes, there are 4 people looking at it right now as I'm making this. Go to the description box and you'll find the link and it'll take you to my spreadsheets. Okay, so this is, let's see, a BYU devotional, February 4th, 1979. All are alike unto God is the name of the talk. At the present time, we are engaged in a project of beautifying the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem by a garden in memory of Orson Hyde, an early apostle of the church, and the dedicatory prayer he offered at that site. It is not because we favor one people over another. Jerusalem is sacred to the Jews, but it is also sacred to the Arabs. A cabinet minister of Egypt once told me that if a bridge is ever built between Christianity and Islam, it must be built by the Mormon Church. In making inquiry as to the reason for this statement, I was impressed by his recitation of the similarities and common bonds of brotherhood. Both the Jews and the Arabs are children of our Father. They are both children of promise, and as a church, we do not take sides. Later on, he says, only they are favored who keep his commandments. So I hope that none of us are like, yeah, Israel, because in my patriarchal blessing, I'm of Israel. No, we know how things are going to play out. We know that the wicked are going to be destroyed, including the Jews who are wicked. But the Jews that are righteous, they're going to remain, at the time of the second coming, and they're going to recognize Christ. And then so are many Muslims. So that's all that really matters. Those that choose Christ and get on the covenant path. So anyway, but this is what's going on. It'll be interesting to see if this thing gets passed. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you think it will be passed. Again, I don't know. I tend to think so, but we'll see. Okay, that's it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.